Hello, hello! The Make It Happen podcast is back. If you were here for the first season, then you are back as well, and I appreciate you being here. And if you happen to be new here, then hi, my name is Melanie Moreno. I'm a multi-passionate creative, a manifesting generator in human design, a low-key astrology junkie, and in recent months, a Libra with more decisiveness than usual. So yeah, thank you for tuning in. These past few months off have given me a chance to regroup, diversify myself creatively, and explore what it is I want at this point in my life. I've kind of been through a lot in 2019, and it was a challenge to see where it was that I wanted to put my attention. For the girl with a self-proclaimed fear of commitment, I found myself struggling to follow certain paths because I was good at them or branch out into the unknown. So, okay, I'll get more specific. You see, for the past several years of my life, I've made health and wellness my everything. I can tell you the micronutrients in different vegetables, the pros and cons of various diets, things to look out for when reading ingredient lists on food packaging, how to choose non-toxic and sustainable products, anything and everything health related. I was pretty good at all of that. So I studied health coaching at the Institute of Integrative Nutrition and thought this will be my path. It took me a while to realize that just because I was really informed about all things health and nutrition doesn't mean I wanted to actually turn it into a career. I had already spent so much of my private life in that area researching things for myself and going through different tests and trials to improve my own health that I just felt really burnt out and isolated from life. The last thing I wanted to do was continue down that path. So I've come to terms recently with just how much the obsessing about health had actually impacted my life, and I want to focus on that less. It's kind of ironic to say that in January when everyone else tends to put their health at the top of the priority list again, or at least for the next few weeks. Regardless, I'm finding joy in creating art, writing, and being open and true to myself for what feels like the first time in a long time. So here we are now. It's a new year and not a new Melanie, but an ever-improving version. A Melanie that has some scars and obstacles to work through, but persists and puts her heart out there anyway. Okay, so in terms of the podcast, we've got a new theme for season 2, and let's put out some special credit to my friend Andrew Tylenda. He produces some really wicked music, and the moment I heard this tune, I knew I wanted it for the podcast. So that new theme song you hear, that's from him. I don't think it's too common for podcasters to change their music with each season, but I like looking at each season as an art piece and giving it proper attention that way. So thank you to Andrew for the new music. Of course, there are some amazing guests coming up this season. We are launching season 2 with a bang. Today, we are joined by the half-ass witch herself, Teejay Ziegler. If you don't already know TJ from her witch walks, live streams, Tarot Tuesdays, or general antics on Instagram, then one thing you'll notice right off the bat is that she is literally fearless. She says what she thinks and doesn't care what anyone says. Not in a reckless or hurtful sort of way, but she's so in her power that she stands her ground and knows her worth. I find that really inspiring to see in another woman, an entrepreneur and self-made business person. She tells us her origin story, how she got started with her spiritual-based services, and dishes out a lot of witchy insight. If your current knowledge on the idea of witches makes you want to exit out of this episode right now, then I'll encourage you to hold tight and give it a chance and just keep an open mind. Oh, who am I kidding? If you're listening to this episode right now, you're probably already that type of person, but, I just want to put the disclaimer out there that today is a little different. Toward the later part of the episode, TJ actually gives me a spiritual gift activation, which is one of the services she offers. This is really cool because you'll get a feel for what working with TJ is like and also get a peek into my inner workings. One other thing, so that won't catch you off guard, I did notice when editing the episode that my voice changes as the reading begins. It's nothing spooky, I just think I put myself into a deeply meditative state. Plus, I had some energy work being done by TJ, who I trust fully. So that's probably why my voice changes just a little bit. It just gets calmer, nothing strange. Anyway, after the episode, I'll talk a bit more about my thoughts on the reading itself and some clarity that came from it. I'll go ahead and also share some of my acquired tips for making the most of energy work since I've had it done a few times now. This is a really cool episode. I think you're going to like it. Yeah, let's get into it with TJ. I'm so in admiration of the way your business has grown over the past, what's it been, like 2 years or so? That
it's actually only been like one. Like officially, it's been, I think in July, it was 1 year. So I don't know how many months, I'm not good at math, but like however many months like is after that. What are we in? Like June, July, August, September, October, November. So it's only been like a month or a year and like 4 months, which is wild to me because I think about that and I'm like, what is happening?
It feels like the moment you just started putting this content out there, people were just really receptive to it and just started grabbing onto it.
Yeah, and what I noticed is the type of content that I was creating was a lot more different than what typical, I would say, like spiritual content there was out. Like if you look at Instagram and you look at like, I would say like YouTube, Twitter, whatever, a lot of people were kind of just like spewing information out, or they were making it kind of, I don't know how to say, it was almost like too curated. And so the way that I wanted to do it is I know how to curate content. Like I have a social media marketing background, so I know how to do that to make it polished. But for me, first of all, it's a lot of effort. And second of all, it doesn't fit me. So I noticed that oddly enough, when I stopped trying so hard, and was just like, you know what, I'm going to put out whatever it is that I want to see and whatever I thought I was missing, that's when things kind of started picking up and everyone was like, oh my gosh, you know, this is so different, which at some point I thought, you know, this isn't that different from me and what I was usually putting out. But when I started putting spiritual things into that realm, it gave it a little bit more substance and people were just very responsive to that, I think. And then also the fact that like, in person, I'm not a very vulnerable person. I'm kind of like a hard ass. People are like, your bitch face is so wild. And I'm like, okay. But so whenever somebody that has that type of reputation comes out and is like, these are my life problems and this is how I've dealt with them and whatever, I think people understand that it's not that I don't care. And it's not that I'm like, you know, I have that bitch face, but it's mostly just because like I've just been through so much that I'm a strong person and I have such a reputation in my life for being a strong person for everyone else that I know. So for someone to see vulnerability like that come from a person like me, I think that was what really connected everything, because everyone's like, oh, you know, you're a real human being. And I think that's the most important thing about what I do. And then also what like other people in my industry do is that you don't want anyone telling you how to live your life if your life has not been that difficult, like if you haven't had to like go through the same type of stuff.
That must be kind of difficult also, knowing that's the way you are, but then trying to work with helping people, and then maybe it kind of comes off differently. Try and find that safe spot, but also, I guess, keeping in mind that if someone doesn't resonate with you, they're just not going to work with you.
Yeah, that was kind of an issue after a while. Well, not an issue, but I would say for a while I kind of slid into that identity a little bit too much, and that identity of being like that hard, tough love person. And so I started being very hard and tough love with myself, and I had to realize when I had to dial it back and be like, okay, no, it's like it's okay to be a little soft just because your reputation is kind of harder. It doesn't mean that like that's the only facet of who I am. And so that was actually a journey that I probably would not have gone through if I didn't start this business and if I didn't start helping other people. But yeah, no, there is that thing of like, if people don't like the way that I come off and people don't like the way that I approach things, then that just means that they're not supposed to work with me. And luckily, there are so many other people out there that do what I do that just have different approaches. They have different tones. They have different energies. And I have complete faith in the universe that, you know, the universe will not send me clients or people just in my life generally that can't handle that or that don't need that. Now, sometimes people need it and they don't realize that they need it and they don't like it. And then later they come back to me and they're like, look, I'm not going to lie, you were kind of mean, but I only felt like you were mean at that point. And now that I realize what was happening, it's kind of like, they're like, I needed that kick in the ass a little bit. And so I have a very comfortable relationship with myself in terms of that energetic form. But I know that when people don't resonate with it, that either they don't like what they're hearing or they just need to go to somebody else. And I don't ever get like hurt about that or anything. It's just, it is what it is. That's how life works. And that's how this industry works as well. And that's why there's so many of us, because there's so many different types of people and people really respond differently to different things. Like messages get through to different people in different ways. And I think that's what that is. And I'm just one form of how that message is going to get through.
I think that's a good transition point for me to ask. Well, first, I don't think I said it, but welcome to the Make It Happen podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Hi.
I do really want you to talk about your upbringing a little bit. I know you've mentioned this in some live streams that you do. I've heard you talk about, but I think it's really essential for people to know a little bit about what your upbringing was and how that kind of led into you discovering yourself and your own abilities.
Yeah, so I was adopted when I was like 7 months old, which is actually interesting because today is World Orphans Day. And so I thought that was really, really cool. And I was like, oh, perfect. But yeah, so I was adopted and I was like 7 months old. My mom, my birth mother was like a single mom and she had to like give me up for my own safety, essentially. There was like a lot going on in that environment. And then my adopted mother adopted me, and she was originally from Holtville, and then we moved to Brawley whenever she adopted me. She's been a teacher for like 30 plus years. And so my upbringing, it had a lot with education. Like my upbringing was very educational, like if your mom is a teacher, like everything is a teaching moment, no matter if you're like crying on the floor, it's like whatever, too bad. But I had a very interesting upbringing because I was raised in a Pentecostal Christian home. And not only did we like go to church, but we were also part of the church. Like my grandpa ran our church, like he was the pastor. And then my grandma did all of the financials, all the books. My mom was my Sunday school teacher for a very long time. Especially in high school, which probably was not the best for your mom to be your high school Sunday school teacher. That's a lot of mixing of things. And then I was a Sunday school teacher for a very long time as well. And I did, it was also a big part of our church band because I played the piano since I was like 5 or something like that. So that upbringing was really interesting because it was still spiritually based. But it was spiritually based in a way that it didn't click with me. It did not make any sense. Me as a human being, I'm very like rebellious. I'm a super independent person too. And I have a lot to do with like female independence. I'm very in touch with my sexuality. And those are all things that do not work in Christianity. Like all of those things don't work. So for me, growing up, it was really, really hard just to kind of connect with that because it was such a big part of my family that it was hard for me to connect with my family as well. And then, into high school, I just kind of like got a little bit more rebellious. I made some mistakes. I was kind of a jerk. And I was 100% probably like a problem child in one way or the other. I had a lot of depression and anxiety. I didn't fit in anywhere. And that was because I wasn't really comfortable with myself because I was never, this took me a long time to realize, I was never given a comfortable space to be. Because any way that I was, when I would rebel and I'd be like, no, this is who I am, my family would be like, no, it's not, this is against our religion or whatever. And I was like, okay, fine. I remember that like one of the very first Halloween costumes that I wanted to do that I remembered was a witch, and everyone was like, they freaked out about it. And I'm like, well, look where we are now. Sorry. Yeah, it was a very interesting upbringing. It was hard because it was my mom and me only. And I didn't have the like a masculine figure other than my mom because my mom is a very masculine person. She is like a total tomboy. So even then it was hard to grow up because I'm a girly girl and like she didn't connect there either. So it was really, really interesting. As I've gotten older, we've actually mended our relationship. It's gotten a lot better. And I realized that once I found my own spirituality, I could actually come back to Christianity. And like, I'm not a full-fledged like Christian or anything, but I feel a little bit better working with like Jesus every once in a while. I'll work with the archangels. And now there's a much better bridge of that gap that I think really needed to happen. And it wouldn't have happened if I would have just kind of been like, okay, fine, I'm going to do what my family wants me to do. And my mom has learned a lot from that as well. And I know a lot of my other family has kind of become a little bit more spiritually tolerant. Mostly because I forced it on them and I'm like, too bad, you guys, like this is it. So we're not going anywhere. It's not changing. I appreciate my upbringing. It was it was character building, I would say. And I think that's also why I'm such a hard person, is because like, and I don't like the word hard. It's just, I'm strong. I'm very solid because I had to work so hard just to be okay and accepted in my home, that when I go out into the world, it is not a big deal for me to be like loud and proud about whatever it is that I am, because when you're supposed to come home and feel like your home space is the safest, I didn't have that. So I had to create that safe space in myself way before most people had to. And so that, I think that kind of set me up for being able to do this career, which I'm very, very appreciative of. So I like that. I mean, it is, again, it is what it is. Everything happens for a reason. And that upbringing shaped me into who I am now. And I'm still trying to like heal a lot of that stuff, but there are good things that came out of that, and good things that now I can help my clients with, and I can help myself with as well.
So what was the actual first step where embracing the witchy side comes in, like embracing your spiritual gifts? How do you even recognize that you had those and then start, using them?
Well, I would say actually I knew I had them way, way early on. I remember being like 3 or 4 years old, and my mom and I used to actually live in like a mobile home because, when you're a teacher, you don't get paid a lot. So we lived in this mobile home, and because it was smaller, you could hear a lot of things. And when I was younger, I remember hearing things in my kitchen, and I was like, Mom, like, why? Like, there's someone in our kitchen. She'd be like, No, 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 there's not, whatever. So actually, like a month ago, I literally realized that was what was happening. And when I was a child, I totally forgot about it. And that has just been coming up lately. But right out of high school, I bought my first tarot deck at like an Urban Outfitters, which is like the worst place to buy one. It's so stupid. But I bought one there, and it was like a mini deck. It was a regular Rider weight. And I realized that I was good at it. Like we went home and I did it with my roommate, and she was like, this is honestly scary. Like, you've never done this before. And I was like, no, I wasn't allowed to. Like, no. And so I did realize that kind of the gateway for me for tarot was like way back in the day. My great grandma used to watch like old soap operas, and there was one where there was like a witch. She was like a card reader. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then my family was like, no, we're turning this off. And I was like, okay, whatever. Totally forgot about that. Later on, after high school, I bought the tarot deck. And then as soon as I did that, that's kind of just what kicked everything off, because I had to, do a lot of research on how to like do tarot the right way, and how to be protected during that. And I wanted to make sure that if I was going to do it for other people, that I knew what I was doing 100%, not just because I had like good raw talent. You know what I mean? It's like some people can just pick up a guitar and they're kind of good at it, but you don't want to put them on a stage. It's kind of like that. So I did that. And then that research led me to actually like the witchy side of YouTube. And I was like, wow, I did not even know witches like existed. Like I did not know that was a thing still. And so I just did a lot of research, and I was like, this seems like shit I do already. Like I did a lot of that stuff. I did a lot of like daily affirmations, and then like picking up rocks and having like meanings for them, and then asking, for signs from the universe or whatever. It's just, I think at some point we all realize that we have certain amounts of power and we have certain abilities, and then we just put the label of witchcraft on it, or spiritual whatever, and then you can kind of fully step into that. Sometimes people need a label for that, but I didn't. But I was just like, wow, I didn't know I did this already. So that's what it was. And then I would say in the last 3 years is really when things have just been kicking off. The business started this last year, but I'd been doing it for money for a while, but I didn't really want to come out about it. I didn't want to tell a lot of people. But then once I did that, it opened me up to this ginormous community of people that was like totally here for it. And now I have, friends all over California, and I would say even all over the world, that are very close friends of mine, that we have kind of come into this community. And if I hadn't stepped into the space, I wouldn't know any of these people, and my life would probably not be as fully formed and healed as it is now. So I'm very, very grateful for that. But I would just say that like it just fell in my lap. I honestly don't even remember when the moment it was that it happened. And I think that was just the universe telling me like, okay, we're going to give it to you when you're ready, and when everything else around your life is ready for it too. Because I think that if I would have stepped into witchcraft like in high school, it would have been real bad for me, really bad, like just in terms of my family dynamic, and also just like high school and all of that was going on. And I think even if I would have done it even like in junior high or something, that would have been bad too. So it came right at the right time for me, and it came right at the right time for me and everybody else in my life as well, to kind of ease into it a little bit better.
Yeah, it sounds like kind of thickening your skin through the troubles of your youth and juggling with your identity. Those were all things that you had to do to kind of be able to then take on this very alternative sort of lifestyle career.
100%.
What are some witchy stereotypes that you feel you've had to sort of fight through? I know there's a whole lot and probably a lot of weird things that people might think. So, do you want to kind of break some of those down? What is and what isn't true?
Yeah, that's such a good question. No one's ever asked me that. Wow. Okay. That's amazing. No, I'm so excited for this question. Well, the first thing is I know for like people that are witches, dating is very hard because you get on things like, like Bumble or Tinder or whatever. And I've literally been on some of those apps and I've had people ask me like, you're not going to sacrifice a goat, right, for me? And I'm like, no, that I think that's illegal, but also like it's a lot of work and it's bloody and it's gross and like that's we don't do that. The stereotype is that like witches go around cursing people whenever they get mad, if someone pisses them off, and it's kind of like that's also not true. There are some people that do, but in terms of cursing, like most of us just feel like it's a lot of effort. When you curse someone, those last years, decades, lifetimes, whatever. And so if you're gonna do that, you've really gotta care a lot. There's a lot of negative intent that needs to, a lot of energy of like wishing ill on another person. So most of us actually don't do that. We're just like, we handle it like regular people and we're like, fuck off. There is also like the stereotype of I've had a lot of people that find out I'm a witch or they find out I do cards and they'll come up to me and they're like, so you're scamming people. And I'm like, no, I'm not a scam. Like, I'm genuinely trying to help people. And I think that that's really sad because the stereotype of witches that do things for money is very much that stereotype of like, we're scamming you, which is not true. But I mean, just like any other industry, there's scams, like there's bad plastic surgeons, there's therapists that don't really know what they're doing. And so that kind of unfortunately in the spiritual space is always highlighted because when it comes to spiritual things, it's like you don't have a physical product a lot of the times. It's like we hear about a lot of psychics that scam people out of hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest in them. And it's just like, yeah, that's readings that haven't really helped you because that person wasn't trying to help you. They're just trying to get money. So that's one of the stereotypes that I think hurts the most. I also think that the stereotype of everybody being Wiccan is also really interesting because a lot of us aren't. There are Christian witches. There are witches that are Buddhist. There are Islamic witches. There's atheist witches. There's a ton of different places that you can go with that. So the fact that everybody thinks that we like go out in the moon and like cry and hug trees and stuff is just like not it. Some of us have seasonal allergies. We can't do that. So it's very it's very weird to hear those types of stereotypes. Most of the stereotypes that I really see are just based on aesthetic. People think witches are supposed to dress in all black and hang out at nighttime with cats and snakes and whatever. And that's not what that is. You've got witches in the kitchen I've got a ton of witch friends that literally look like prep school, like white women. And I've got a lot of other witch friends that are very into that aesthetic of like the all black. And then I've got witch friends who do like spell work through like rap and like I've got witch friends that are DJs and stuff like that. So I think a lot of those stereotypes come from what we see in like media, and movies and just general fear from other practices that don't accept witchcraft. But generally, I think that some of those stereotypes are getting a little bit better, but there's a ton, and it's just wild to me that people still like think that that's what witches are because it's just witches are people, and the only thing a witch really is a person who does things on purpose, like doing things with intent, putting intentional energy into things. It's literally like saying like I'm gonna put it's good luck type of thing. So I'm gonna put this rock in my bra because it's gonna help me today with like good luck or whatever. That's witchcraft, and it's like chill out, it's not everyone's not sacrificing goats. Like, that's not what we're doing.
Well, if it's about doing something with intention, then, like you said, even before, like when you were doing the research on YouTube, you're like, I do a lot of this already. Is that really what you would consider to be defining between someone who's a witch and someone who's not? Or is everyone secretly, secretly a witch then? They just need to embrace it?
I have a very strong feeling that everyone is secretly a witch. But I mean, I just think that everyone has the ability to use their own energy, their own thoughts and intent to make their lives better and to shape their own reality. And that is essentially what witchcraft is. witchcraft is very much the basis that everyone has power. We all have our own power to literally like determine where our future is going to go, what our life is going to look like. And when we put the intent into doing that, that is witchcraft. You know, a lot of people think like if you're a witch, you've got to have crystals and you've got to, you know, dress like one, or you've got to like read the books and whatever. And it's like, dude, no, it's not that wild. It's not that crazy. Now, there are different forms of witchcraft that do require a lot more work, right? Like if you're doing, like you're trying to be a high priestess, like that's an actual like type of course or whatever that you have to go through. That's years and years of work. But just to say that you're a witch and to do witchcraft, it really just requires that you embrace that identity and that you know that you're doing things on purpose and then taking responsibility for whatever it is that you're doing, good and bad.
I love that. What do you think are some practices that you have developed or worked on to try and tap in further with yourself and improve your own spiritual abilities?
I definitely feel like checking in with your soul is very important. And when I say that, I mean just kind of like sitting and being quiet, checking your human ego and checking whatever it is that you want to happen and what you want your life to look like, and really asking like the person deep down inside to be like, okay, what's going on? Is it good? Is it bad? What do we need to fix about us? It's a lot about really checking that ego and saying like, okay, I have flaws. There are things that are going wrong that I can fix. How do I fix them? What's the source? Shadow work is very important to me. And I think in general, it's very important to practitioners and people who are going to, especially if you're going to do this job for money, you've got to get your own shit under control. You've got to be self-aware. And so shadow work is really the importance of going like, okay, where am I toxic and where did those things come from and where can I be better as a person? I think everyone has room for growth. I like to say that we're all kind of like computers or phones. You know, we all have bugs in our software and we need to update those every once in a while just to work better in the life and the reality that we live in. So that's been really important in terms of checking in with myself. I specifically have a lot of emotions. Like I've got a lot of Scorpio placements. So my emotional capacity is very deep. So I feel a lot of things very strongly. And for a long time, that was a problem because I did not want to be emotional, because it's just like, you know, you don't want your emotions to rule your life. But part of that shadow work practice for me was going in, seeing where my emotions were coming from, and then knowing how to get them out the right way instead of avoid feeling them. So definitely shadow work, important to see your own toxicity and then heal that and get that taken care of, because that leaks into the rest of our lives. You know, that kind of, it can ruin our relationships. It can ruin the way we see ourselves. It can ruin our own abundance, our work relationship, all of that stuff. That's very important. And then I would also say, for me, it's been really, really eye-opening to open up my spiritual practice to include my ancestors, which for a very long time I was kind of iffy about because I'm adopted. And I was like, yeah, I don't know them. Like I was like, who am I going to talk to? I don't even have their names or anything. But that has actually helped me a ton. I have a lot of hereditary witchcraft in my family. And so I've gotten a lot of really good tools and even just insight messages and healing from, you know, the family members that came before me that did this. Like my birth mother was like a huge kitchen witch and she was gnarly. She did a lot of like really big things. She was extremely powerful. So I kind of figured at some point that just because I didn't know them didn't mean that they weren't around. And so that's actually helped me connect with my family line as well as kind of my own identity, which was very much rooted in how I was raised instead of who I was from birth. I almost for a while kind of disregarded the first 7 months of my life, which is really odd. But I was like, well, I was, you know, in an orphanage, and it's like that didn't really do anything for me, but it did. And once I really embraced that like inner child stuff and all of that ancestral work, things really turned around. And that's when all this heavy hitting stuff really started to happen, and all of this like big change that I've been seeing, and I'm sure like you've seen it in my business, in my brand too, is that connecting with that really kind of made things kick into high gear in terms of business and also in terms of my own personal growth. So I'm really, really grateful and happy that I could have, I eventually kind of checked myself and was like, we're going to do this, we're going to try it. And now it's like a really big part of what I do. And it's a huge part of my brand. So I definitely encourage people to to work with their ancestors and to work with the little person inside of them, who they are and who shaped them, because it really, really helps have a very more full picture of who you are now. And then also, who you want to be and where you can take that and how to do that in the best way instead of self-sabotaging.
I know tarot is part of what you do, but it's not only what you do, right? You do get a
Mm-hmm.
lot of intuitive messages. So how do you work with both of those? And how are they different?
For me, tarot has its own kind of system. It's like a structure. There's a couple different set systems of tarot. You've got the Rider-Waite system, which is the like Ace of Pentacles, all of that. What we usually see, it's the more, I wouldn't say standard, but it's the more popular one. And we also have the Thoth system, which is a little bit different. So those two are really, really interesting because tarot has its own structure. It has its own base interpretations, and then people can come in and kind of add or take away things where they see fit based on the experiences of their life and whatever intuitive downloads that they get. I like tarot. It's helpful. And for me, for a long time, it was the only thing that I did. But it was kind of a stepping stone into the rest of the things that I can do, because now I do like psychic healings. I do Akashic Records work, which is all the past life stuff. And even just going in and like intuitively speaking and connecting with people's souls, seeing what they want outside of this specific human experience and all of that higher knowledge of how to make this specific human experience better. So the difference would just be that like the tarot cards provide a very good jumping off point. They're good like message starters, I would say, because you've got something on paper right there in front of you to look at, and it's a lot easier to trust tarot for some people than to trust their own intuition, right? Because you kind of feel like sometimes you get messages and you're like, is this real? Or is this just me thinking about things? Like, is this just what I think is going to happen? And eventually you have to just step into that space and really, really trust your intuition in that one. So I like to say that tarot is kind of when you have water wings, and then you're on the shallow end, and then the intuitive stuff, that deep intuitive stuff, the psychic work, is kind of when they throw you out into the middle of the ocean without a boat or a life raft, and they're like, swim, and you're not 100% sure if you could do it, but eventually you realize that it's a little bit easier actually for me, because then I'm not kind of stuck in whatever the meanings the cards give me, because sometimes I'm a very, very structured person. So if I get a card and I get a download that has nothing to do with what the original meaning of that card is, I trip myself up a little bit. And I'm like, oh, but that's not what the book says. And so for me, taking away that structure actually helped me to really rely on my own gifts a lot more than whatever the set system was that was in place.
How were you dealing with that then? If you're doing a reading and you get certain cards that speak to you one way, but they symbolize something else, what do you do? Like, you're with someone, you're trying to give them a reading. How do you know if it's the time to trust your own intuition, or if something maybe on your end is kind of getting in the way, because that could happen too, right?
It can happen if you are a good tarot reader. That's why I say, only a couple people really have the ability to do this for other people, because as a tarot reader, you kind of have to check out as a human. You've got to really check out and just be kind of the vessel for a message. I always trust my intuition whenever I get those weird meanings that come through for me, or the weird interpretations, because I just know, the intuition that I have and my higher self, the universe, isn't going to give me that unless, I should say it. It doesn't. I like to work very efficiently, so I won't get information that's not pertinent. I don't ever get information that shouldn't come out. Now, earlier, before I was really, really good at trusting my intuition, I would tell people like, okay, this is what I'm getting, but this is the traditional meaning of this card. So you can tell me which one applies to your life more. And I have never been afraid to make my readings a conversation between people. There's a lot of readers out there that they're like, don't give me any information about your life, don't give me any input while they're reading you, because they want to just be the person to spout off information and whatever. And for me, there are so many possible interpretations of the cards, and there are so many ways that something can go, and people are just unique in their own experience, that I like to make it a conversation. I like to say like, okay, so what's going on in your life? This is what this could be. Does that make sense to you? And because sometimes it takes a little bit of talking through to even get other people, like to get the client to understand what's happening. Because sometimes, I'll say stuff like, oh, this looks like somebody is kind of trying to hurt your feelings, or someone's trying to sabotage you. And they're like, well, I don't think, whatever. And then we talk through it a little bit more. And then they realize it's somebody in their life that they didn't even think about. Maybe they were thinking when I first said it that it was like love related. And then all of a sudden, the more we talk about it, the more they realize it's like somebody at work or something like that. So I always say, in that rule, just talk about it, make that a conversation with the client, and understand that tarot is a tool for understanding. And if you're going to understand something, you've got to communicate about it. But usually when those things come through, I'll either tell them both, or I just know that the information coming through for me is what they need to hear.
I imagine you've also learned a whole lot about people through this sort of work. Are there any sort of common themes that you feel come up, or things that, I don't know, people have trouble accepting, or that they come to you for, that they're trying to work through a lot?
Yeah, I've learned a lot about people, a lot. A lot of things that have really taught me that people are errored. All humans are they have problems, and no matter what you think people can and can't handle, sometimes they just can't. And that's what I've learned, is a lot of people are kind of unsure of what they can handle themselves. People forget what they go through or what they've gone through when they're in the middle of like some form of life difficulty or something. I have a lot of clients that come to me and they're like, I don't know if I can deal with this. Like, I don't know if it's going to get better. And I have to literally sit there sometimes and tell them, like, think of all of the difficult times you've been through in your life. You've made it through that. This thing is going to be a piece of cake for you once you just let it roll, let it rock, let it happen. I have a lot of self-doubt. A lot of people come through with self-doubt. I've noticed that a lot of people come to me with issues that I've had in my life, and I know that that's because the universe shapes you that way. So yeah, no, I've noticed that people come to me with like self-esteem issues, because for me, I had that a little bit, high depression, anxiety, security issues with being like, oh, this person is garbage to me, but I love them, so should I stay with them? And I'm like, I've had to learn this lesson a couple times, and so the lessons I've learned have been able to help other people through what they deal with. But I've just noticed that common themes are like, when people love other people, it's very easy to forget your own self-worth. And I've noticed that a lot of people have a lot more obligation to others than they do for themselves. I've seen a lot of self-guilt about putting, yourself first. And I really have to kind of hammer that into a lot of my clients. And that's what that tough love is too. Sometimes you need people to come along and slap you a little bit and be like, no, you're more important than these other people. And it's the hard truths too, because for me in my life, I've ignored a lot of hard truths. And so when I started seeing them, I started embracing them, I started to get a lot of clients that had some hard truths that they need to look at. And it's hard for them to really look at it until a complete stranger tells it to them. So that's also something I've noticed as well, is that when your friends tell you something, it's one thing. When you tell yourself something, when you know it, it's one thing. But when a complete stranger comes in and tells you the same exact things, that's when people kind of go, oh, okay, I've got to put real work into this. I've got to do it. All people are essentially the same. To me, it's just, people are different, obviously, but for me, everyone has problems, and it's just people differ in the way that they deal with them, and they differ in the way that they personally react to them. But at the core, the problems are all kind of the same. Everybody wants to be secure and safe, and everyone wants to be loved. And I think those are two very normal things to deal with. It's just, how important is it for us to find it in ourselves? And then how important is it for us to find it in other people? It's always the battle.
That's true. That's really difficult because, as you said, I think it's our first nature to try and take care of other people. I love how so many themes, it's not just like, on a side note, for anyone who does think witchy stuff is just all crystals and like, wearing black and magic and candles and whatnot. Like, there's so many elements of things that are so valuable for us as people, like you just said, nailing in that self-care and self-worth. These are basic human principles that we need to develop, and I feel like it's really cool to hear how it can appear from so many different angles. So I really like that your work addresses that, and that's so integral to your process.
That's something that I really wanted to stress too when I did this work, is that, people think of witchcraft and it's all about like doing spells for money. And making people love you and things like that. And it's like, for me, it really is just making your life better from your end. The only thing you can control is what you do. So at that point, it really is about, really those human principles of knowing yourself, knowing what you're worth, knowing what's important to you. And yeah, we are taking a little bit more of a psychic and spiritual, like woo-woo approach to it. But at the end of the day, these are things you can't ignore about the human experience. And for me, there are some people that come to me that I know could probably go to therapy and find the same results. But if they trust me a little bit more than a therapist, I'm not saying that there's like a substitute for that. But for some people, whatever helps them find peace in themselves, however people find that, I think is fine. If they're not hurting themselves or anyone else and they're just making their life better, whatever avenue that comes through really should not matter. And the packaging that it comes in shouldn't matter. It's just the end goal of people being whole and healed and happy in self. That's the only goal that I have. Like I really in my practice tend not to do tarot card questions or things based on like, are they going to love me forever? And are we going to stay together? And am I going to lose my job or whatever? Like those are questions I tend to not take or not resonate with, because no matter what job you have and no matter what person is in your life that loves you and no matter who you end up with, if you are not whole and happy in yourself, that person, that thing, it's not going to matter and it's not going to make you happy and you're not going to be happy. So I always try and focus on helping people, be better right now and in whatever circumstance they're in, and be happy with themselves so that wherever they end up, they're still solid and stable and, ready to take whatever comes to them, because whatever happens in the future doesn't matter. It hasn't happened yet. But what you can do right now is fix your problems, and you can make your life right now better by just making you better as a person.
If someone comes to you, like you said, in that sort of maybe like a really needy mindset because they are scared their partner is going to leave, for example, and let's say they're messaging you, so you're not in person with them, can you still feel that energy from through the screen, basically? Can you still feel what that energy is that they have? Or what does it feel like when you are going to read someone? Do you need to sort of ask their permission and then you channel that, or do you right off the bat get it? I'm just so curious what that feels like.
So intuitively I can feel emotions. I'm an empath and I'm a visual empath. So I can feel things, but most of the time I see people's emotions in their body language. And also like even cops and stuff can do that. But I can also see it kind of in color. But for me, when it's through message, I can definitely feel the energy. There's a certain type of insecurity and franticness that comes through. And then also with a lot of the times when people have those like issues, they literally say like, it's an emergency. I'm going crazy. My anxiety is super high. And they're not calm, even in the way that they message me or interact with me. And I have a policy that I don't read people in that state, because if you are that way, you really are just looking for the answers you want to hear, and you probably won't, those people don't really listen whenever you tell them something that is anything but reassuring. So if someone comes to me and they're like, oh my God, I found this or whatever on my husband's computer or on my boyfriend's phone, and are they cheating on me? Or maybe even like, oh, I haven't talked to this person in a long time and I still can't get over them, and will they ever come back into my life? It's like, well, you're focusing again on the future. You're focusing on what someone else is going to do, which you can't control. And usually those people want the reassurance that that person will, and, or that person is not going to hurt them. And at some point, you can't really avoid that other people in your life are going to hurt you. And so what I do a lot of the times is I will either not message back, depending on what time it is. Like I get a lot of those after business hours, like 2:00 in the morning, 11 o'clock at night, things like that. And I'm like, well, first of all, I'm not going to do this. Because I've made this my business and because I've made this my life purpose, my soul and my guides and everything will not let me fully tap into someone and accurately read them unless there is an equal energy exchange. So in that way, money, because that is the only energy exchange that can be done for work or trade. Because I have a lot of friends that are like, that do what I do, and they're like, oh, I'll trade you an oil for a reading, or we'll switch back and forth and stuff like that. But unless there's an equal energy exchange, my spirit and my physical body even, and my guides and my spiritual team will not allow me to be like an energetic battery for someone to like charge themselves with, essentially, to just kind of take and not give, and especially in that frantic energy, because they aren't even in a place where they can value, the work that I'm doing, because they're just looking for whatever it is that they want to hear. So it's definitely easy to tell for me. I know some people, it's hard, but even like when it's not strangers, I have very close friends of mine that'll do that to me every once in a while. And I still have to be like, look, you guys, like, I love you, and sorry you're going through this, and I'm here to talk to you as a friend, but this is my job, and I'm not going to do that. It's kind of like, if you were a therapist and your friends are like, I need you to analyze this person for me. And it's like, no, you can book a session, you can come to my office, or stuff like that. So it's a weird thing to know energy when it comes through a screen. It's very odd, because you think about it, it's just text on a screen. You shouldn't be able to feel feelings through it, but sometimes they hit you like a truck, and I can feel them really strong. And sometimes I literally have to like delete a message after I answer it, because I can't have that on my phone. Like, I can't, because we absorb energy through our phones all the time. And so I can't even have that in my energetic space, even if it's on a digital plane. It's gotta go.
Wow. It's like setting boundaries, but to the extreme where you know right off the bat if something's working for you and something's not.
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely a gut feeling, especially when it comes through with other people. We deal with other people through our solar plexus. Small little energy lesson here. Whenever we deal with people, it comes through our solar plexus, because when we think about the very first interaction we have with another human being, it's in the womb space. It's with our mothers through the umbilical cord. That's the first person to person exchange that you have, like past, like cellular creation of like the cells coming together and stuff like that, like being made of other people's DNA. But person to person, as a fully formed being, the umbilical cord is the first energy exchange we have with people. So when we're coming at people from an equal space, when we value them as equals or deal with them as like a human, usually when it's like adult to adult or teenager to teenager, or like child to child, that comes through your solar plexus. So I always have those gut feelings about people. And that's why a lot of people, when we have like intuitive feelings about people we meet, or people we see on the internet, and we're just like, oh, I've got a weird gut feeling about that. That is literally your solar plexus triggering and going like, hey, there's something going on here. So I always trust those gut feelings, because on an energetic level, that's me directly connecting to that person's energy on an equal playing field. And then my soul saying, no, it's not working.
Is that why? Well, I don't know. I remember when I was younger, I always used to feel like less than when I talked to adults, or I mean, even now, sometimes I feel like that. Would you say that's an energy thing, or is that just maybe that's just a like a
It's
something?
both.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it can be both, because it is an energy thing. Like, for example, I when you're a child, or not when you're a child, when you're an adult and you deal with a child, you don't come from your solar plexus, because they aren't on an equal playing field with you. They're kids. So you come from that like womb space, lower your sacral sometimes, and that's where you place them, but you still stay at the solar plexus. So your energy comes from the solar plexus, but it literally has to go downward to speak to them on an energetic level. So yeah, that's probably why you felt every once in a while like less than. And even probably because I know that you kind of look young. So most likely when you deal with adults, because this happens to me all the time, adults will deal with me, like older ones, and they kind of talk down, or they assume that I know less, because visually I look pretty young. Like, I know people a lot of the times think I'm literally still a teenager in high school, and then they see my tattoos, and then I speak, and they're like, oh, okay. But for you, yeah, that's probably what that is as well, is that people are literally energetically putting you at a lower place, because they think that you're younger with less experience and less cognitive ability than they have. So I have just learned that whenever you have people with that energy that make you feel like that, it's kind of like a superiority complex type of thing. And they're not coming at people, they're judging people based on their appearance or experience or whatever, and not coming to them knowing that the other person that they're speaking to is literally just another whole sentient human being, and maybe they have different experiences, but it doesn't mean that they're lesser than. So yeah, 100%. That's literally what that is.
That's exactly it. You just, wow. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's such a struggle, but it's on your part or on my part, I guess, to push through that and kind of just show like, hey, I know what I'm talking about here, and kind of make sure you get your foot in. That way you can be seen and be heard.
Yeah, and that's 100% about the boundary thing too. And that's also about self-worth, because sometimes people can come in and they can make you feel less than because of your age or because of the experience that you have. And you have to go, you kind of have to put your own foot down with yourself and be like, no, we're not going to let this person's energy affect the way we feel about ourselves, our own experience, and what we know. And then it's also kind of what I've noticed happens too is when I step into my authority with people that are older than me, that are in my industry, and then I blow them away or whatever, then you kind of can see their energy check itself, and their energy will go, it'll pull back a little bit, because they'll be like, oh, okay, you know what? Maybe I put off a little bit too much. A lot of that is projection, and a lot of that is other people wanting to put themselves a little bit on a pedestal and make somebody else feel inferior. Maybe it's not on purpose making you feel inferior, but they're definitely purposefully trying to make themselves feel superior. And, there's reactions, everything has a reaction, and that everything you do affects other people, not just you. So that's where that can kind of come off and kind of change relationships with people and the way that people interact with each other, for sure.
Wow. Okay. I do want to backtrack a little bit into how you've built your business. We talked about different aspects of your business a little bit, but I feel like it's really essential to touch on this as a female, as an entrepreneur coming from the Valley. I really want to just sort of hear what your approach has been and how you've structured that. I think you're a full-time businesswoman of your own, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I'm actually really proud of that. That in a year I was able to start paying my own bills with this business, which I really was like, I had a lot of people tell me, like, you're in the Valley, it's not going to work, and you're going to have to go get another job and whatever. And I was just like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to do it. And I knew that stepping into a business like this, and just even starting a business in general in the Valley, is hard. We see a lot of small businesses kind of fail or struggle really, really hard, just in terms of like if they're normal businesses, people just open up like clothing shops, or they'll open up like food places or whatever, and even those struggle. So I think it's really weird and baffling that I was able to create a supernatural business, essentially a spiritual business outside of the standard for the Valley, and still make it work. So what I did was, knowing that it would be hard to break into it in the first place, knowing that it would be hard to get positive reception, I first started doing shit for free. I started telling people like, hey, I'm offering, my old Tarot Tuesday used to be free readings, and I would pick like random amounts of people, and I would just do free readings and then tell them like, okay, in exchange for this, my energy exchange wasn't money at that point, it was reviews. So that people knew I knew what I was doing. And people knew that I had integrity while I was doing it, that I was coming through from a space of love and wanting to help, and not a space of just wanting your money, right? Because I wasn't asking for money. I was just asking for people to verify that I knew what I was doing in the public space. I really wanted to reach my community in a way that was realistic for where I was. So when I started my business, I didn't start with the pricing that I have right now. I look at the pricing that a lot of my friends have in areas like San Diego, Santa Ana, LA, all of that. Their pricing is way higher than mine. And that's because the business that they have, spiritual businesses up there, are a lot more common. And people up there also value the service a lot more. They know what it goes into doing whatever it is that we do. But down here, first of all, our, the average income per capita for the Valley is extremely low. Even people here who are like in the upper, like our upper class, income in San Diego, they'd probably be middle or lower middle. And so here I knew that people did not have that type of money to throw away, or not throw away, but to invest in things like this. And not only that, but people didn't understand what the investment was in the first place. So I knew that I had to first create the need before filling it. I had to educate people so that they knew what purpose my service had. And then I had to say, okay, now pay for it. Because if people didn't even think it was important, they wouldn't pay for it. But first I had to build up a platform of people understanding what it can do for you and what I could do in terms of my specific service, and then fill that need. You've got to create the need before you fill it. And so that's essentially what my structure was at first. And that's still how I do things, about like my new inner child healing, and when I started doing healings, and then whatever it is that I'll probably do in the future, the first thing I do isn't just say that I'm doing it. The first thing I do is I'll do a couple posts about why it's important, how I've been doing it, how it can change your life. And then I start saying, okay, I also do this. So you guys, if you need help or if you need someone to do it for you, I'm the person to come to. And that's how I originally structured it. And it's been working. So I definitely feel like that's a really good strategy in terms of starting any type of business, is first educate people as to why it has to be there, and then let them know that you are the one to make it happen.
That's incredible. So each time these are things that you're working on yourself, like you said, your inner child reading, that was something you just kind of felt coming up in your life that you needed to address and found techniques that worked for you. And then you got the cosmic messages of how to help others with it, or what do you think?
Well, partially, yeah. So I know that my life purpose is to help other people, and my life purpose is to help heal and to help other people be the best versions of themselves, and whatever way that comes through. Like my mom, she's been a teacher for such a long time that, and she does way more than she should. So I even come from a family, I was raised in a family that I saw people giving what they could to other people, using their time to help others. And so I knew that was something I wanted to do, but I always knew that I wasn't going to be like a doctor. I don't have that kind of work ethic. And I wasn't going to be like a lawyer because I don't care about stuff like that. So I was like, okay, I didn't really know where that was coming from. So now I know everything that I do, everything that happens to me in my life is supposed to be used at some point later on to help other people. So I've noticed whenever things happen to me, whenever themes are coming up in my life, they happen to me before they happen to everyone else. So we think about like things that come up during the Mercury retrograde, or even when people say like, oh, this is happening to me during the full moon. It doesn't ever happen to me during that full moon. It happens to me about a week or two or three before. And I've noticed that as a trend, that like I'll go through something and then I'll wait a little bit because no one else will go through it. And then everyone else it's happening. So I knew that with that inner child stuff, when I was really, really working through it, I was like, okay, I've got to pay attention to this, because at some point coming up, people are going to have to deal with it too. And those big, heavy hitting concepts happen months before, usually for me, than other people. So when I really felt like I was fully developed in my inner child healing, not done, but when I had a really good grasp on how to do it, what needed to be done, then I was like, okay, we're going to extend this to other people. We're going to give that as a service. So I always knew that whatever it was that I was doing had some form of connection for others. And so whenever it comes up, I just know it's going to end up being like some form of an offering on my menu, whether it's forever or whether it's just for like a little bit of time, because I know that at some point everyone's going to have to go through it. And it's always that, like, whenever it's that concept of when you are a leader, if you're going to lead the pack, you can't be part of it. And for me, if I'm going to lead people out of this darkness and out of whatever issues that they're going through, I can't go through it when everyone else is going through it at the same time.
I always felt like I get the leader impression from you, but not the leader who's, so above everyone else. You seem very much like you are grounded in what you do and speak from a place of knowing, not from just the authority side. I respect that.
Oh, thank you. That was actually a huge thing for me too, because that leader role I did not want to step into for such a long time, because I was like, I'm literally going through all of this shit, but just a little bit before you guys. Like, it's not that it's something I've completely got a handle on all the time. And I don't ever feel like I'm in a place to be like a role model, because I have a lot of people that are like, at this point, they're like, oh, you're such an inspiration. And I'm like, oh my God, like, I don't know if I want this, because it puts a lot of pressure on you not to make mistakes. But at the same time, I know I'm going to make mistakes. So when I make them, I pay attention to them a little bit more, because I know that people will come along that have made the same ones or need help with them. And so I do try and not to embrace the leadership role as like a guru, basically. Like, I don't want to be that person that people come to and is like, your word is authority, but I do want to be there to help people and give them the tools and knowledge that I just happen to have more than they do. And I always gain things from the clients that I work with. I always learn stuff when I do my readings, or even from just dealing with people. I learn just as much as I have to teach, but it just comes from a different place, and it's different things in my life that I probably wouldn't have addressed, or things like that. But Yeah, no, that means a lot. Thank you. Because I definitely do not want to be like the person who feels like they're above everyone. And I've had a lot of people say that to me, like, oh, like, why do you think you're better than all of us that you can tell us how to live our lives? And I'm like, no, I'm just telling you how it went wrong for me and how you might want to fix that. Because we all share a human experience in one way or another. People are going to make the same mistakes at some point in some form. So I just want to, help people avoid them if I've already made them.
As you kind of said earlier, it depends on what your mindset is and what frame of thinking you're coming from. If they have some issues with that, like they're just projecting, their low feelings and thinking, why does she think she's so much better? Why is she, you know, bragging? I remember when I used to look at social media that way, like, oh, everyone's just bragging. But no, it's not everyone's just bragging. Well, some people are, but
Some
it
people are
depends on,
bragging.
the way you're looking at it, your eyes. So at this point, I think it would be a good part to take a little break and we can then come back and dive into the spiritual gift activation. With the rise of non-toxic products in the beauty and skincare industry, it's hard to find what's worth trying. There's one brand that I've been using for over a year now that I have got to tell you guys about. That is FRE Skincare. Their company started with the launch of a specially formulated sunscreen for active lifestyles that won't leave you greasy or break you out. But they've since expanded to a wide range of products from tinted moisturizers to facial cleansers and oils, a line of body products, and most notably their FRE 123 set, which is the perfect place to start if you're new to their products. I'd also recommend picking up their Detox Me face mask. It has cleansing microbeads made from jojoba oil that are perfect for a light exfoliation without stripping your skin. It also leaves my face feeling so fresh and supple after using it. I love it. FRE's team of dermatological scientists have formulated each product with the rejuvenating benefits of argan oil to hydrate, protect, and exfoliate your skin and leave you glowing or your money back. Plus, as part of their give back mission, for every skincare set that they sell, they plant an argan tree to help replenish the endangered argan forest in Morocco and support the women who harvest the argan oil. To get the glowy skin you've been seeking and a risk-free trial of their famous FRE 123 set, head to freskincare.com/MelanieM and use the code MelanieM at checkout for a wicked discount. That's freskincare.com/MelanieM.
Okay, so then all I really actually need from you is just that you're in a space where you can kind of like close your eyes and chill for a second. I do need your full name, whatever it is that's on your birth certificate, and that would include your middle name.
I actually do not have a middle name. It's just Melanie Moreno.
Oh, perfect. Okay, cool. I feel like that's a white people thing to have like a middle name. It's like all of my like white clients have like 3, and I'm like, okay. And then I have people who are like, I don't have a middle name. I'm like, cool, perfect, 2 names, great.
Hispanics just
Okay,
have,
so then
10 last names.
yes, oh my God, yes. I'm like a million relatives. I love that though. I'm like, that's one of my favorite things about your guys' culture is that like your families are all so big, and I love that. Okay, so then what I'm gonna do is the way that this works is essentially I tune into your soul. What is going to happen is they kind of show me things in like metaphors in terms of a physical body or a skeleton. So I will say things like, oh, your bones look like this, or there's something here, or this space looks like this, like your chakra or whatever. It'll look like either a vision, like a room or something like that. So whenever I say stuff like that, just take that as like a metaphor and not a physical diagnosis, like if it has to do with your bones or your body. What is very common though is that if there are things that are blocked or that we're activating or addressing in your spiritual body, around that specific area, like say I say that there's something in your shoulder, you may have been experiencing physical pain in whatever area that is in, and that might help it, but there is no guarantee. But a lot of the times that's what happens. Another thing is it's also very common that you will feel or experience physical sensations, change of temperature, being cold, hot, chills. Sometimes people get weird muscle spasms. They'll get like not a pain, but maybe pressure in a certain area of their body. They may even feel like shortness of breath, itchiness, tingling, that is all very normal. But I just like to give this disclaimer to everybody that if you feel like there is a physical sensation happening that is not spiritually based, or if it's gone too far, like you feel like you're having a panic attack, you can't breathe at all, anything like that, then immediately, obviously, be done with this, call an ambulance, get that taken care of, because your physical health and your life is a lot more important than an activation or a reading. So that's just kind of all of my disclaimers there on how this service works. Okay, alrighty. So the way that I do this is first I will go through, I'll pull a couple cards, and I'm using the new Amenti deck that I got, which is actually really amazing for this reading particularly. It's been working really well. And that kind of just gives me a good like pointer as to what your spiritual gifts will be focused on. And then I also, I'm already getting like downloads from you. That's really funny. And then also we'll just go in on the visual aspect of things. You can close your eyes if you want to, but you don't have to. And if you're ready, I'm ready.
I'm ready. Let's get into this. I'm so excited.
Oh, perfect. Yay. Okay, so the first thing I always do is an opening prayer. So just let me tune in. So the way that you can actually help me with this, and the way that you can tune in on your side, is just make sure that you take really good deep breath. And that would be just make sure that you are really filling your lungs with air and then fully letting them out. It's not like the breathing that you would do, just kind of like sitting and like being alive. It's really good conscious breathing. Okay, so I'm going to tune in. Okay. So you open the connection and portals to the soul of Melanie Moreno. I ask that the spirits, gods, guides, ancestors from my side and her side usher in this information. Open the connection and allow us safe passage. We thank you in advance for your insight, healing, wisdom, and energy and time. We ask that you protect us. You only allow spirits, entities, information, and energy-based forms to come through that have intent of love, light, healing, and good energy. There's some things coming through already, and so the prayer is getting all messed up. That's so funny. Okay. The portals are now open. The portals are now open. The portals are now open. Okay, so I always like to tell people how their energy looks at first. Now, this may change in the way, like in the process of this reading, because sometimes things that are blockages can change the way your energy looks. But for me, I don't actually read your aura in terms of like all the time. I just read whatever color is coming through at this moment with your energetic space. You're actually giving me a really good purple, which is cool. Your purple's really clear too, and purple is usually third eye chakra. So your third eye is actually pretty open from what I'm seeing. And then you're also giving me a little bit of yellow, which is a little bit of that solar plexus energy. So I'm going to go ahead and check on that. And then you have a very good bright green coming through, which is really nice. Green is that root chakra energy. So generally your colors look pretty well maintained. Like it doesn't look muddy or anything like that. And then throughout this reading as well, you can kind of participate. Like I said, I like to make my readings like a conversation. So if you feel like you've been feeling those energies lately, or if I address something, then you can just go ahead and, put whatever input you want, because sometimes that does help me. And that'll come through also for you. We can kind of talk about whatever it is that happens. So you actually got 3 cards. And as I was talking, which is really funny, as I was talking, I hold purity in high esteem, and I'll send you pictures of these later. But the picture on this specific card is she is like a green woman, and she's on this pedestal, and then all of her chakras are lit up. So your chakras are actually telling me that they're all pretty good, but we're going to go in and see what could be beefed up a little bit. You also have I invoke laughter. There's like this little jester looking girl. And then you also have I regard all altars with respect. So you, your soul is coming through and indicating an honoring of different cultures, different opinions, and different people. I definitely feel like part of what you, your soul purpose and what these spiritual abilities have to do with is a little bit of bringing balance to people and a little bit of balance to yourself as well, but also having to do with that. I invoke laughter and I regard all altars with respect. When those two come together, I get really excited because it's somebody that really has fun in exploring other people and other people's points of views, which is actually really cool because with a podcast, that's essentially what you're doing. Okay, so let me see what you're giving me when I tune in, go in. Okay, so I'm looking at your crown chakra and your solar star chakra right now. So your solar star chakra is a chakra that's technically not in the main 7 chakras of that chakra system. A lot of people don't know about the solar star chakra. People think that our chakras start at the crown chakra, but your solar star is right above your head. It's technically not in your physical body. It is what we like to use, or what I like to use, as kind of an antenna, and that's what connects us to source. It connects us to like the universal energies, Akashic records, all of that kind of stuff. So I like to say that that's our like USB port, and then your crown chakra is like your processor, essentially. So your solar star is where things get plugged in, and then your crown chakra and third eye are how you process them. So what they're kind of showing me, which is really interesting, is I don't know if do you get headaches every once in a while, like migraines? Are you prone to those?
No, not really. No.
Okay, so that's actually a good thing. The only reason I ask is because what they're showing me is there's essentially in your skull little honestly, it's like one big crack in the middle, and it's not that your skull's like cracked. There's nothing wrong with you. But essentially what that is you get a lot of information through your solar star chakra, and when it's cracked like that, what I usually notice is that you've gotten so much that I don't know how to describe this. It's like when you have a container and you overload it so much that it starts to crack because it can't hold anymore, and then people keep putting more in. So you actually get a lot of intuitive downloads, but you kind of store them all up there without processing them, to the point where your storage container has kind of cracked. And so what I'm seeing is messages will come in for you and then they leave. It's like it comes in and then it goes right back out. Like there is no storage anymore because there's no more room. So it's almost like an overflow, essentially. So I'm going to go ahead and see what that's about. But usually when I see people that have that, they're prone to either migraines or just general, like, I don't want to say fleeting thoughts, but your mind, like your thoughts go very fast. And so you can kind of lose track of a train of thought very quickly.
I do feel overwhelmed with information often, and I do have a very difficult time making decisions.
Okay, so yeah, that's probably part of that, is because downloads will come in and then they don't ever they don't have enough room to stay so that you can really think on them clearly. And also what that is too is that they're telling me you get a lot of downloads from other people. So you can kind of tell based on talking to someone what their issues are, what's going on with them, or you'll even get downloads about them based on how they relate to your life. But what happens is you essentially have to swim through a lot of, or sort through a lot of extra information to get to the core of whatever it is that you should be dealing with right then and there. And that's where the indecision comes in, is because you cannot fully focus on that one thing and the surrounding factors, because then other things will come in and kind of dilute that process. So I'm just going to go ahead and have your guides kind of scoop this out a little bit. They're showing it to me almost as like, it's like your skull, but it's in a less like spooky, kind of like gnarly type of bone matter type of way. It's kind of like a bowl, and there's just a bunch of gunk in it. And so they're telling me that this bowl is very what is it? Let me see how to describe this. It's just got so much in it. It has a very large capacity, but you've overfilled it. And so when the bowl gets full, it overflows. And then they're saying, to even emotionally affect you, because that energy will flow into your other chakras instead of being processed through the ones that they needed to. So you have a lot of mental energy and things that you should be processing on a mental, logical level that you start processing on an emotional level, or even on a level of self-worth through that solar plexus, because that energy is leaking over. So we're just going to actually, the first thing I'm going to do before I activate anything is dump. We're going to just dump it all out, because it needs, you need a complete refresh. Okay, so the way that they're showing me this is, so a lot of the times people just think of the chakras in the front, and we need to start thinking about the ones in the back, because the ones in the back I personally use as drainage systems. So I like to think of like all of we have main drainage system through our root chakra. That's where we dump a lot of stuff. But our chakras, when they get specifically blocked individually, what we can do kind of is go to the back of them. Or I like to think of that just as the back of our body, and kind of like if we're laying down, like completely laying down on our back, it's almost like we're like a bathtub kind of. And so that back drainage, you just pull a plug and it'll come out. So essentially what I'm doing is they're showing me that your guides are actually taking your, like this bowl, but it's huge. It's just like a big, it's almost like a crap. I don't know if you've seen the not the movie, the ride, the Atlantis ride at Disney, or not Disneyland, at SeaWorld. There's that big bucket at the top and it dumps water. And it looks like just like a giant bowl type of thing. And so that's essentially what it looks like, is you hold all of this information kind of like water, and they're dumping it down and it's going into this funnel and then out the back of your they're saying your crown and your third eye chakra. That's where it's going, because your downloader is not the problem. Your solar star chakra is not the issue, but it's the engagement of all three to get all of that kind of processed and out of your spiritual and mental space as well.
I have always felt like I have a not I will never feel like I have difficulty coming up with ideas or being creative. It's more like I hold on to a lot. I have always felt that.
It's getting them out for sure. Okay, so that's fine. So then let's see what the issue is. How are we going to activate this? Okay, so part of the issue here is that you do have a lot of ideas and you don't act on them. And what they're saying is that even just articulating them is going to help a lot. So you can even engage your throat chakra in this and just say, you know, like, okay, this is something that I need to do, this idea or whatever that I have. And not even, well, your throat chakra rules communication. So sometimes not speaking, but writing them down. Like sometimes I think ideas come into your head and you think they're good ideas and you're like, oh, I'll pin that for later, but you don't ever write it down. So really start making a practice of writing things down, like keeping like a little notebook or using the notes in your phone, because it's just getting them out of that mental space is the first step of like making them happen. So that's just like a pointer for you. I'm going to go ahead and increase your capacity here because you do have a lot of downloads that come in and you're like, that's not going to stop. But we're going to try and I'm going to put in like almost like a filter they're showing me. So at the top of your skull, and this comes through a lot for people, the first thing I'm doing is I'm kind of mending this crack, and I'm bringing the two pieces that it's cracked with, like the two pieces of your skull, back together. And then a lot of my healing magic comes through that it's kind of like mermaidy, watery based. So what I do is I fuse these together and then kind of as like a poultice or like like super glue almost, I go in with like a green, like bioluminescent algae. And that is going to make sure that the healing kind of stays in until you are fully healed, and until it's fully back together. So we're going to do that first. Okay, this is really cool. So as the two pieces of your skull are coming back together, essentially, there is this network of crystals at the top of your head. They're showing me they look like, what is this? It's like, geez, I wish I was better at names of crystals. It looks like celestite. I don't know. That's kind of what it's called. Celeste something. It's a very celestial type of whatever. It's kind of like a whitish blue type of crystal. It's really, really pretty. I have a geode of it actually, and I use it a lot to charge a lot of the pendulums that I use to get downloads. So that makes a lot of sense for you. But they're saying essentially that your soul knew. So this is what happens. This is very educational whenever I do these readings. Our souls have a certain purpose in every lifetime. And just in general, as a soul, we have a purpose. Some people are meant to be like crazy leaders and really shake the world and come in and like break things down. Some people are meant to be caretakers. Some people are meant to heal. And some people are meant to relay information and to process information and then get it out in a way that other people can understand it. So for you, they're showing me that this system that your soul has been created to aid in your soul purpose. And your soul purpose really does have a lot to do with taking information, taking ideas, and then translating it into the world so that it can either help or bring clarity to other people. They're really saying that you are they're showing me like an opening of a veil almost. So kind of bringing things that maybe people don't know a lot about and bringing more information and light to those issues or those things into the world, which is essentially what you're doing with this podcast. So you're right on line with your life purpose. So that's really cool. So they're showing me that essentially where this grid, it's almost like a crystal grid. It's like a net that it looks like, and it starts at the top in like circles. There's like a little circle, and then there's a big circle, and then it's kind of like, it looks like when you throw like a rock into the water and it makes ripples. So it's those little concentric circles type of things, and you have little pieces of this crystal, and essentially this is your soul. It's like a system being beefed up for whatever hard work you're supposed to be doing. So for example, me, I'm on the phone every day with people. My throat chakra it's really beefed up. That's what that is. And then my solar plexus chakra as well, because I deal with people on a people to person basis. And then my root chakra is also really, really, it's got some systems like this as well, and especially systems for drainage. So for you, a lot of your energy and a lot of your soul purpose comes from those chakras up in your brain area. They're also telling me that let me see what this is. Yeah, your throat chakra has a lot of power. And essentially now these crystals they've created a grid on your head, and then it goes down the back of your head and then in your spine, and it almost creates like a neck piece around your throat chakra. Because this is really good, is what's going to happen is now these crystals that are activated, that I've activated, and that your guides have also helped you activate, because it's not just like me. They've created, again, almost like a backup battery system, to where whenever you engage this ability, and whenever you engage your abilities of, what is this? It's cognitive information relayal. That's what they said, but that's not a word. The cognitive relay of information is essentially what that is. And so when you know, and when you use your ability to relay information with a purpose and an intent to bring light into whatever situation that is, that's when you're going to get most of your spiritual work done. And that's also when you're going to manifest the most, and when you're going to be able to help other people the most too. Okay. Okay, so do you have shoulder pain every once in a while?
Occasionally shoulder pain, but it's more like the sides of my neck and where my neck meets my head. I do get a lot of pain there.
Okay, so what that is those systems kind of being blocked up a little bit. So I'm going through and I'm clearing those out, because that's where I saw a little bit of the blockage. Now your shoulder pain, or that kind of like that area essentially, is where you're kind of storing a lot of stress. So whenever, it's kind of like, okay, how do I describe this? It's like a bobblehead almost. You're kind of like a bobblehead. And just in the fact that you are storing so much in your head space, that your neck spiritually is trying to support all of that weight. So that's why you've got a lot of pain there every once in a while. And that is kind of your soul giving you the signal. So I would take that pain as a signal to unload a lot of that mental energy, because it's kind of literally your soul saying like, hey, there's too much up here. There's too much pressure. Either ground it. So send it down your grounding cord, or just, get it out in one way, maybe through your throat chakra, or through writing it down, through journaling or whatever. But that is essentially your spirit guides and also your higher self trying to ground that information out of you, because it's been stored for so long that it's like, they're showing me it's like a stick having to hold up like a giant, almost like what is this? Like those weighted balls that they have at the gym. It's like, you're putting so much on one tiny little thing that it's starting to crack under the pressure, kind of. So that's what needs to be helped and fixed. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to unblock your throat chakra, because it's okay. What it's showing me is there's almost like not a gate around it. It's like a barrier around it that you'll expand it to a certain amount, and then you bring it back in. Like you've almost put a cap on it, or like a threshold on it. So we're going to go ahead and break that threshold down and reactivate your throat chakra to the 100% mark, instead of, it's kind of at like 65, to where you'll articulate feelings and stuff, and you'll get your point across. But sometimes it's almost like you don't want to be too harsh, or you don't want to step on other people's toes. But it's more like you're actually inhibiting the amount of input or valuable information that would come out of your throat chakra in that energetic space.
I do feel like sometimes I'll have so much to say, even just writing a post for Instagram, for example. I'll feel like I have a lot to say and I have to cut it down so much because I'm like, no one's going to read this. It's huge.
Yeah, I do that a lot too. A lot of the times I'm like, should this be this long? I'm like, oh, I don't know about this. But you know what though? Like if you need to get it out, get it out. Just get it out. And the people that are meant to read it and see it are going to be the ones that take the time to read, see it, and then resonate with it. And so don't focus on the audience, focus on what you need to get out, because the audience will come. You are resonating energetically with a certain audience. So that audience will be there based on what you put out. And what they're going to start doing too is that in terms of like you having so much to say, is people are going to realize that you hold yourself back. So they're going to either push more in terms of boundaries. They're going to know, you know, like, oh, Melanie's not going to say anything about this. Or they will start seeing where you're holding back. So they'll start to hold back. So in terms of like your platform and the people you interact with, like via social media and stuff like that, if they notice that you are pulling back, maybe you're not saying everything that you want to say, they're going to feel like they can't say everything that they want to say. They're going to feel like they need to put in that restraint. So it's not just for you, it's for like, you know, everybody else that's kind of engaging in your content and engaging in whatever it is that you are communicating outwards. You have to put up the energetic precedent of saying, I'm going to get it all out. Obviously do it in a controlled manner and like do it in the right way, get it out consciously, but that's what that is. It's consciously relay your information, but don't cap yourself at I don't want, or this is too much information. There's never too much information. It's just the way that you get it out. Okay. This is really cool. So they're showing me that this barrier, this cap that you've put on it is almost like, it's like if your throat chakra is a peanut and then the cap that you've put on it is like the outer shell of like a peanut M&M kind of like, it's like a weird little like shell, like a hard shell. So your guides, and who is this? You've got Archangel Raphael coming through. So I don't know if you were raised Catholic, if you do have Catholic family. But he's literally going at this with like a hammer and like breaking it down.
There's a little bit of Catholicism on my mom's side of the family, but I wasn't really raised with that myself.
Okay. So what happens a lot is when even if we don't personally connect with it, if our families do, if our ancestors do, our ancestors will often ask, you know, whatever entities they believe in to come and help you. And that happens a lot. Like I was not raised Catholic, but I do have a lot of Catholic family. And then I also do have like even my friends' family that have passed that work with me. They'll send through a lot of the archangels and stuff for me as well. And then if they want to work with you, I mean, they will. They just will if they feel like it. So he's coming through and he's trying to help you with this. He comes through a lot with people who have a lot of throat chakra problems because he is all about communication and messages. And divine messages, literally, but also kind of like that warrior of having to like really stand up for your words and stand up for what you have to say. So that I'm in no way surprised that he came through for you that way. Okay, so then, yeah, that looks really good. Oh, perfect. Okay, so then this is actually going to help you a lot because now that that is activated and going, now you're going in and I almost see like tubes reconnecting, and it's like plumbing almost. There are tubes reconnecting and they're covered in this like crystal, in this celestite crystal, and it's like glowing, and it's essentially just connecting all of these chakras that are part of this system. So now they're actually reconnecting with all of your other ones. So all of your chakras were working fine on their own. But when it came to working together, there was a little bit of like gears missing, connections missing. So that's what we went in and reactivated, and we re-engaged those systems so they worked a little bit better. Okay, so then we're just going to flush everything out of that now that everything's connected. So, okay, perfect. So what I'm seeing here is a lot of your spiritual abilities really have to do with the way that you interact with other people and then relay the information they give you. And not only that, but also relaying the information that the universe gives you. There's a lot of, like, for me, specifically, like, I relay information from the universe, but it's just, I spout it out. Like, I'm not trying to, like, make it, it's not that I don't try to make it easily understandable. It's like, I'm not really trying to communicate these messages, for a wide audience type of thing. But for you, a lot of this is a lot of, you've got a lot of that cerebral energy, a lot of that processing energy. I don't do a lot of processing when I get this information out. When I do my readings, I just say what it is I say, and I don't try and, like, make the words, pretty or whatever. And then the only time that I do is when I kind of do it for social media. And even then, I'm very, like, raw about the way that I communicate things. Things for me come straight from my third eye to my throat chakra. For you, though, it really goes through a lot of those processing chakras at the top. And so your spiritual abilities really do have to deal with hearing information. They're showing me this connects to the chakras in your ears as well. So those are opened, and they weren't open before. You may be hearing things lately. Probably you're going to hear, like, I wouldn't say dead people per se, but you might be hearing, like, ringing in your ears. I would pay attention to that, because whenever we get ringing in our ears, it usually means that there is a message we need to pay attention to coming through, either psychically or just paying attention to, like, whatever it is that's going on right then in that moment. Like, if you're dealing with something really hard, the message is usually to ground yourself or deal with that. But yeah, you have a lot of, it's really, like, they're really hammering home the phrase of cognitive relay of information. And it has a lot to do with, like, broadcasting on a wide scale to make it easily understandable for people who probably wouldn't go in and try to understand a lot of these things on their own. And that's not just spiritual stuff. It's even, like, if you did interviews with people that, like, are into cars, you know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know anything about car culture and, like, car clubs and stuff like that. So if you did an interview with somebody like that, that would also engage these systems of the spiritual download of, okay, I'm going to deal with somebody like this, or the spiritual download of, this is how I get this out the best. And then knowing how to broadcast that to a wider audience to bring a little bit more light and understanding to it.
Is there a way to
Okay.
What do you call it? Like, make this more efficient? Because I do feel like it's all in my head, and I feel like it weighs a lot there. And as you said, the way your approach, for example, is to just sort of get it out in a raw way. Is there a way to make my my process more efficient so that it isn't so intense and even time consuming to process?
Right. Yeah, it is super time consuming. Literally it is, well, the first thing I would recommend to you is, at the end of the day, or maybe you don't have to do it every single day, but at the end of maybe your week or every other week, write down everything that has stressed you out and is taking up mental space. Stressors and things that we worry about that we can't change are just essentially mental dead weight. There are things that are up there that don't need to be up there because we can't do anything to fix them. And so it takes up space that we could have that would give us a better way of processing things that we actually should be processing. So at the end of the week or every other week or whatever, write them all down, burn them, flush them down the toilet, do what you got to do. To get rid of them, because that'll free up space and make it more efficient, because then you don't have to swim through a lot of things that you don't really need to process at all to get to, the core of what you should be paying attention to. Something else would just be, like, writing things down as they come to you, like these ideas, these downloads, write them down. And then also intuitively listen to, it's not listen, it's okay. So for example, I would say, like, the questions that you had for me today were so good, and that's how it is. It's like intuitively what you'll get is questions for people that you interview and stuff like that would make the interview go a lot more efficiently. So you've actually started doing that. Like, the questions that you thought of, you may have just been like, oh, this is what I would want to know, but those are intuitive questions that are coming through to you that other people would also want to know. And so pay attention to things like that. Let me pull you one more card and then see what comes through on how to make it more efficient and how to work with it better. Okay, yeah, you have a keep the waters pure. So again, that is really, like, about making sure that you don't let that, like, other people's energy other people's opinions muddy up that mental space that you have. Don't focus so much on the future. And again, don't focus so much on your audience about like, okay, this is, people aren't going to read this, or like, how is this word going to be best for, how are people going to, whatever. You intuitively already will get things out and communicate them and translate them for people in a way that they will understand. So don't worry about that, because you naturally do that. That would be like a chef walking into a kitchen and going like, oh my God, what if I don't know how to cut this vegetable? That would be like if Gordon Ramsay was like, how are my knife skills? It's like, why is he worried about that? He's fine. Like, we all know his knife skills are fine. So it's stuff like that. You also have, I do the best I can. So it's honestly just have faith. Like, I hate saying things like that because it's so like, whatever. It's corny, and it's kind of common sense to just have faith that what's coming in needs to come in. And then also have faith in that I do the best I can. Just try. You know what I mean? Like, there is no set way to do it. There is no way to guarantee that it'll work. And trust yourself, trust your intuitive knowledge. So I would even go in and like, it's almost like when we go through our computers and we try and figure out what we need to delete, what we don't need. It's like, think about the things you're dealing with, and as thoughts come in, sit for a second with them and go, is this going to help me? Is this going to hinder me? You'll feel in your gut feeling about whether or not that's something you should store or not. Your system, literally your soul, will tell you like, yeah, this is not important. Get rid of it. Let it go in one ear out the other. And then some things you'll get that blinker to be like, I should hold on to this for a minute. I should really think about this, and I should stew on this. So trust that, and then trust any and all messages that come in for you. So not just on how to make this process easier, but even if you deal with somebody and you have a weird gut feeling about them, trust that as well. Or if you are sitting around not really doing anything, you hear like some character on TV say something and you're like, oh my God, that applies to my life. And you're like, does it? Yeah, it probably does. So trust that your intuition works in whatever way that it works, and don't fight it. That's what that is like, don't overthink it. Let it process from wherever and however it needs to process.
That's validating.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go in and check if everything's good. Yeah, everything looks fine. Everything's re-engaged. So aftercare, I would just say that take an aspirin or anything like that, because you probably won't get a headache, hopefully, if you're not prone to them. Usually people who are prone to them guaranteed get them. I'm getting a little bit of a headache, and usually that's a blinker that you might have a little bit of one later today. So just so you're not miserable, I would just kind of watch that. And then also, you did dump a lot today, so make sure you're hydrated. Drink a lot of water, because on a cellular level, drinking water helps our cell turnover so that your body can mend and heal from whatever is going on. But also, because you are dealing with your processing systems, it's kind of like a computer, when you've got like 50,000 programs on at once, it's going to run pretty hot. So you might get a little warm today. And so water is going to help cool you down. And also, because you did flush a lot of things out, you dumped a lot of dead weight. Drinking a lot of water is going to help you flush that out on a physical level as well. Other than that, there's nothing else. I'm going to go ahead and close the connection. Do you have any more questions before I do that?
I think that's all for now. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay. I close the connection in the portals between the two souls. I thank the gods, guides, ancestors, and angels for coming through, aiding us, helping us, and protecting us. I thank anyone else that came through in order to help Melanie heal and activate these systems. I bow to the soul of Melanie Moreno, and I ask that you continue this healing without me, and that you maintain the work that has been done. You accept it, and you allow it to reintegrate into your system and into your DNA. The portals are now closed. The portals are now closed. The portals are now closed. Okay, so that's it. That's how that goes. I know a lot of people think it's like really crazy, but it's mostly just me talking to you and telling you what I'm doing, and then you participating wherever you feel like you want to and whenever you can.
Yeah, I love it. I feel like you did speak on a lot of things that it sounds like me. The moment you started with the colors, I thought that was interesting, because I have been told I have a strong, was it the sacral chakra? I think, the yellow one.
Mhm.
So it's funny that you mentioned that color. And purple is a color that sort of a deep purple is a color that resonates with me a lot. And I'm not too big on green, but there's a friend of mine who sees colors around people, like everyone has a color, and he says I'm green. And so I thought that was interesting too, that you just kind of named those sort of colors. Yeah, a lot of the information too, it ties in so much with the way I feel about myself and the struggle, the ongoing struggle I always have of deciding what to listen to and what not to. And it's a good thing to hear that I can take value in everything that's coming my way, because the intuitive messages are meant to be listened to instead of doubting them. I guess I wondered if, like, is it too much ego? Is that why I have like gain in the way? But if everything has value, then I'll just write it down, I guess, and see what happens to it.
Yeah, it wasn't for you. What I did, yeah, I didn't see a lot of ego being the problem. It was almost like, I don't want to use the word insecurity because it's not what it is, but it was more so, it was overthinking. It was wanting so much to make sure the messages were correct that you were kind of not poking holes in them, but really putting them through like 5 different filters before you validated them. And I think that now you just have to kind of let go and allow like Jesus take the wheel, like let your higher self take it and take those messages and do whatever it will with them. And like I said, it's like our spirits, usually our souls, and the universe works very efficiently, and it's not just my spirit, it's everyone's, that they don't give you something that you don't need. And I love the saying that, like, even though I'm not like a practicing Christian, that God doesn't give you anything that you can't handle. And a lot of people think that that comes through in terms of he won't give you any like struggle that you can't handle in terms of like, loss or heartbreak or whatever. But it's also like God doesn't give you abilities that you won't be able to control or handle. He's not going to give you information that you don't have anything to do with. Like, he's not there to waste your time. So on a bigger cosmic level, it's like the downloads that you get, you wouldn't be getting them if they didn't have a purpose. And if they didn't have some form of weight that had to be given to them. So I think that as long as you remember that, it's going to be so much easier for you to process this information, because you'll realize, sometimes it's not just that it's information that should be processed, but sometimes it's in the sorting. It's like, where do you put the information? Like, what do you do with it? And sometimes we do get information that is useful, but not pertinent at that time. Or we'll get information, downloads that they're tiny ones, and they're just for you. They're not always for other people, but the big ones are the ones that we really should pay attention to, especially when we're in an industry of, I know you don't work in the spiritual space, but you're literally in an industry of broadcasting information and communicating with wide audiences. So when you do that, you've got a lot more people that are going to resonate with those messages. So you really have to take heed of them and not ignore them. Because here's the other thing too, is if it's supposed to come to you and you ignore it, the universe is going to give it back to you anyway. So you might as well take it the first time instead of the 7th or 8th.
That's great. Great information. All right, let me take a quick break, and then we can get back into this with some closing questions for you. I want to let you in on what my supplement routine looks like right now. So the first thing in the morning, I like to make a hot drink. Sometimes it's lemon water, but I also love my yogi teas. I'll prep that and grab a pack of my Care of supplements. Previously, I used to dig around my kitchen cabinets looking for each of my individual vitamin bottles, opening each one, gathering a little pile, possibly forgetting a vitamin. It was just such a chore. Now I can get all of the supplements I like to take conveniently in one little package. Care of makes high-quality vitamins, minerals, adaptogenic herbs, probiotics, and other supplements. And all you need to do is subscribe to what you want. When you go to takecareof.com, you can create your profile, take a short quiz to assess your supplement needs, and they'll take care of the rest. It's a fully customizable subscription service that will have your supplements delivered right to your door. No more shuffling around your cabinet looking for pill bottles or having to worry about running to the store to repurchase. I love that I can just grab my Care of packet and everything I need is in there. Care of takes care of you. To try Care of, head to takecareof.com or visit the link in the show notes to get $40 off of your first order. That's takecareof.com. Okay, so we'll get into some closing questions that I like to ask everyone who comes on the podcast. And this might not be too new to anyone who follows you regularly, but I do want to ask, what is your sun, rising, and moon sign?
So I'm a Sag sun, I'm a Scorpio rising, and I am a Gemini moon, which explains why I don't shut up. But I like to say that I'm mostly a Scorpio because I am a Scorpio stellium. I've got a ton of significant placements in Scorpio, and just a lot of placements in Scorpio in general. So essentially, like if I was going to describe myself based on sign, I'm like a Scorpio with like a little bit too much fire. Like I'm a very reckless Scorpio.
What are 3 things that make you feel like your best self? These can be products or routines that you have, anything.
Oh my God. I'm like, I don't know. I think that probably just maintaining, a disconnect with social media actually makes me feel really good because it's my job now. It's part of my job. So knowing when I don't need to be on social media and not being on it helps me connect with like the people in my life. So that makes me feel like my best self. This is probably going to sound really ego-based, but it's not. I really like to look at my own accomplishments because I would say that it's really odd for me to see them. I really don't realize that I've accomplished so much, and then once I look at it, I feel a little bit better about what I have going on moving forward because I've already done so much. And then I don't know, water? No. Yeah, that last one, I don't know. I think honestly, just being able to connect with people, making an impact. The reviews that I get have been so great lately, and they've always been really good. My clients have been really cool about that. But when I get those reviews that come through of people saying they're like crying and that they know more about themselves, like that's what makes me feel my best self because that is a direct indication that I am fulfilling my life purpose to allow people to open the door to who they are and then heal that person and love that person. That's like all I want and all I need in my life.
That's beautiful. What's the best piece of advice that anyone has ever given you?
You know what? This is really funny. My mom, when I was younger, and actually a lot of people in my family when I was younger, and people still do it to me now, because I've got a little bit of that reckless Scorpio, that sharp tongue. They told me that it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And for a long time, I was like, screw that, I'm going to say things however I want. And like the older I got, the more that I realized that it's not what you're feeling that's invalid. It's just the way you get it out. That has changed my life for the better. It's made me understand people a lot more. It's made me a lot more understanding of myself. So definitely, I think that, and kind of blanketing over just like, it's not what you do, it's how you do it as well. It's not what you're trying to accomplish, it's just the way that you accomplish it is what's important. And I think that that's going to stick with me for like the rest of my life for sure.
And what would you say is perhaps a book, a podcast, a movie, or any sort of resource that has inspired you and that you would like to recommend to listeners?
So there is a book, and I totally forgot who it's by, but I will Google it really quick. But it's called Love is Letting Go of Fear. I found it actually when I was snooping through my mom's old college books. And I don't know, she never told me why she had this. I don't even think she knows that I stole it from her. But it's by Gerald J. Jampolsky. He's a doctor, and it's amazing because it really is kind of a book about the all-encompassing concept of love. And then the purest form of love is love without fear. And that is, it's not just loving other people, it's self-love as well. Of, when you love yourself, it's not being afraid to look at the good, the bad, the ugly about who you are. And then loving other people it's about not being afraid of what they're going to say whenever you tell them what your feelings are, or not being afraid that they'll leave, or not being afraid that they're not going to love you back, or whatever it is. But people have so many different fears around love. It may even be like loving a hobby and being like, oh, but like, what if I can't do this? Like people are going to say it's weird. So it kind of is like a multi-level book. It's only like, I think like $10 on Amazon. It's small, it's a little paperback, and that book changed my life. And I rarely say that, but I would say that is one book that I just recommend everybody everybody read or listen to. And then also there's a podcast on iTunes, and it's by an internet friend of mine. His name is Jarrett Sleeper, and he is people know him from Clever, but he has a podcast called My Good Bad Brain, and he has a lot of people come on and discuss mental health. People that you wouldn't think have like mental health issues, and they're high functioning or they're not or whatever. But that is such a really good podcast for understanding humans and feeling like a human, and like being okay with the fact that like being a human is really just not ever knowing what you're doing and just trying your freaking best.
Cool. Everyone needs to check those out for sure. If you could have dinner with one person who's living or dead, who would it be?
Zelda Fitzgerald, which is so odd. People, I don't know. I feel like whenever people are asked those questions, people have to think about it for a minute, but I love Zelda Fitzgerald. She is one of the greatest women of history. She's a great writer and a poet, and her husband, Scott Fitzgerald, they were a famous like power couple. They had a lot of struggles, and there's a lot of stipulation that he stole a lot of her work. So I would just, like to sit around and talk to her about that. She was known as like a Spitfire, and I very much resonate with her energy and the way that she comes across via writing. She's very deep and very unhindered about the way that she communicates things. So definitely her. Yeah.
Do you have access to sort of like tapping into that in any way, like channeling her? Can you do that?
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, I just haven't. There are so many, I've been really focused on like dealing with my own ancestors and my own family. But yeah, it's really funny that people think like when celebrities die, celebrities in any era, any capacity, that like they wouldn't speak to you or work with you. But it's like when they're dead, they don't care. Like there is no hierarchy in death. There's no fame in death. So big players like that. I get a lot of friends that work with like Frida Kahlo. A lot of my friends work with a lot of like the members of the Beatles. I've had like Mac Miller come through for me every once in a while. Yeah, it's very possible for me to do that. I've never actually thought of dealing with Zelda, but I feel like she comes through whenever I read her stuff anyway. So we just have a little connection. But yeah, no, totally. I could tap into that if I wanted to. Just sometimes it's a lot of work. And sometimes like I just don't want to bug them.
That's so cool. Okay, what is next for you? I know you're constantly stirring up really cool ideas and different sort of services for people. So what do you have in mind, or any plans for things that you might want to come up with?
Well, right now I'm really trying to step into, the deeper, darker things of the work that I do, that shadow work, the inner child healing, the things that people don't really want to look at. I've been doing a lot of that lately, and I want to continue to do that. That's been really a big download for me. I'm also stepping into the role of like educational priestess. So there's like a portal that I'm on, the Witch and Womb portal, and I've been doing like I have a course on there, and I've been working a lot with trying to figure out how I can educationally bring out my skills instead of just saying like, this is what I do, whatever. I'm making a lot more of like a structured curriculum type thing. So I'm really excited to step into a more educational teacher-y role. So that's coming up for me as well. I'm going to be posting a lot more courses and instructional things. And I also have we're thinking of doing a subscription service, just a little one, nothing crazy, and see how that goes, because I know that doing self-work and even just like witchcraft and magic work is a lot of effort for some people, and especially when people don't really know where to start or how to kind of develop their own practice. It's easier just for somebody else to do it for you. And I don't have a problem doing that if people are seriously going to do the work and let it work for them. So I'm going to start doing that too. Other than that, there's nothing new, that I have coming that I've planned, because that's just not how I do things. I just let it come to me. A lot of these readings and stuff, they pop into my head about 2 days to 2 hours before I post them, and then we get into them. And a lot of the times I start my readings, and the very first reading I did for a client for the inner child ones was literally like the first one I ever did. Like I just go into my appointments and I wing it. And that's what works best for me. And some people freak out about that. And I just have faith that it'll come through at the right time in the right way. So yeah, there's no real crazy plans other than things I've already started working on. But I'm sure some cool stuff is going to come up. I have utter faith in the universe that it's not going to let me rest for very long. It never does.
I have utter faith in you. So I'm sure everyone is in store for good stuff.
Oh, thank you.
We've talked about it, but where can people find you in case they're new to you? Where can they learn more about Teejay and all of your services?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at thehalfasswitch. And you can also find me on Twitter at the same thing. I'm on YouTube if you just look up the Half-Ass Witch tube, because I don't know why I did that. I should have just made it the Half-Ass Witch. I don't know what happened there. And then you can also find me on my website, sorryforsharing.com. It doubles as my blog that I very rarely update, but that's where my shop is. And that's where my original booking form is. Sometimes I do let people book through DM. So if you just find me on Instagram, my menu is also on Instagram. And Instagram is also where I keep most of my things up to date. So like current running specials and stuff like that. But I'm trying to branch out into a lot of different things. I'm attempting TikTok, but we'll see how that works out. I feel too old for that. I don't know. I don't get it. But that's where everybody's at now. So I feel like I have to get on that wave. But yeah. And then you can also find me on Facebook too. The Half-Ass Witch. I do have a page, but it's essentially whatever it is that's on my Instagram. It's not something I put a lot of effort into.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much for being here, Teejay. I really appreciate this. I love the reading, and I hope this helps be expansive for anyone else who has not yet tried something with you or who's just interested in learning more.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. I was so excited, and you had such good questions. I'm like, like whenever you do interviews like this, everyone has like kind of the same questions, and then you gave me some curveballs. I was like, crap, I gotta think here for a sec. Dang it. I have to use my brain. But no, it was really, really good. And I thank you so much for allowing me to do this, because I love doing stuff with local people that want to like bring a lot more culture and knowledge to the Valley specifically. I think it's so important because, whenever I get these interviews and stuff for San Diego, or when people in LA want to do podcasts and stuff, I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. But this is hitting really close to home. So I am so glad I got the opportunity to do this with you.
Oh, thank you. There we have it. As you heard me say in the episode, one of the reasons I love working with Teejay and recommend her to others is because of her emphasis on empowering the readee. Is that what they're called? The person receiving the reading? Anyway, she has a lot of information, but it means nothing if someone isn't willing to be proactive and make changes for themselves. That's personally what I like to use tarot and spirituality-based services for. After trying to work through issues on my own, sometimes there comes a point where I just feel stuck, and resources like the ones that Teejay offers help give me direction. My sun sign is in Libra, so I constantly feel like the scales weighing issues back and forth, and back and forth again. In my younger years, I would have the hardest time making decisions. But in recent time, the indecisiveness felt crippling. I would stay immobile out of the fear and confusion tied up in possible decisions. I felt that slowly melting away the days following the reading, and Teejay also helped me see that the terrible indecisiveness I was facing was not just me being stuck. My whole processing unit was kind of flooded. So I still weigh serious issues now, but there's so much I can respond to with efficiency. I can hear my inner voice say yes or no and not just be swamped with unnecessary information the way I was before. I can't even tell you how good that feels, just to be able to think and work more efficiently. I have so many ideas, and now it feels like I can hone in on the ones that are true to my soul and not just X, Y, and Z information that floats in and out of my head. And yeah, it's a really cool feeling. Teejay is amazing. I 10 out of 10 recommend her. Finally, I do want to mention some quick things that I think are helpful with spirituality or energy-based work. I did take notes on everything, and I would highly suggest that to everyone who gets a reading. Sometimes the reader provides information that is a little bit too fast for you to process at the moment, so it's good to have notes to refer back on those. Not to mention, clarity can come a few days after the reading or session. So if you have the notes, you can piece together what was happening at the reading and how that's relevant in your life, because information takes a while to settle in sometimes. I've been told by healers that after energy work, it's best to take it easy and drink lots of water. And this doesn't really pertain to general tarot readings, but it is important for deeper spiritual work. Also for me, I've noticed that I don't necessarily feel the changes as much right away as I do the following 2 to 3 days. So staying hydrated and taking it easy is basically my mindset for a good 3 days, just to not exert myself. I find that my mental focus is best applied towards myself and just being with me. The best way I can describe it is that I feel like a blank slate. I feel like my woes and frustrations are lifted, and I actually feel pretty lethargic too. Like I'm energetically exhausted, which makes sense because my spiritual aura was cleansed and revamped. So again, I just take that as incentive to rest a bit more. Journal, drink tea, be at peace, try and limit outside information, podcasts, news, all that stuff so that you can just really listen to your soul at that time. If you are at all curious about the spiritual gift activation, tarot, or any of Teejay's other services, definitely reach out to her. You can also reach out to me if you have any questions about my particular experience. Yeah, so thank you for listening. I hope you found this episode to be fun and different. If you like the episode, share it with someone else who you think might enjoy it. Make sure you're subscribed for the next episodes that will be coming out on Wednesdays. Also, head to the iTunes store and leave a rating and review for the Make It Happen podcast. It really helps us get seen and helps others find the podcast. All right. See you guys next week. Bye.